Hello all, and thank you so much for our patience this evening. We're really excited to share with you some tips on using a cookie lesson plan that Nasco Education shares. We have had a couple technical difficulties, which is why we had our slight delay getting started today. So we are going to try to continue to be able to share a PowerPoint, an amazing PowerPoint that Marla has prepared for tonight. But if that doesn't end up coming through, we will definitely be sending you that link later on, and we'll talk through kind of the major points and share the lesson plan on the screen. So thank you for sticking with us. Of course, it's been a year where we're all having a learning curve on these various technical difficulties. A couple notes too, that as we go on, we would love to have a robust question and answer session. There is a box to type any questions that you might have into that question box. We'll also have a survey at the end that will launch, and about an hour after our webinar ends tonight, you will be getting a continuing education credit that you might need certificate in your inbox, as well as a recording of tonight's video. And like I mentioned, I can also, if we don't end up getting the PowerPoint up, send out an email later on with those attached kind of slides so that you can see the things that Marla has prepared for us tonight. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Marla, who is our Family and Consumer Sciences teacher presenting tonight. She works at Howells Dodge Consolidated Schools in Nebraska, and she's been teaching for 40 years and is also an FCCLA advisor, yearbook advisor, and senior class sponsor. She and her husband, Jim, have 2 married children and 5 grandchildren, and she enjoys teaching family and consumer sciences and working with junior and senior high school students.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you about Cookie Capers, a lesson plans that I created several years ago. We'll talk a little bit about the lessons that are involved and talk about some of the things that we can do to make it work. So thank you so much, and thank you for your patience.
So Marla, I am just pulling up the lesson plan, and then I will share my screen so everybody can see that.
Okay.
And we'll get going.
Okay, I'm gonna put up what, see if I can get, there we go. For some reason, I'm not able to share my screen, but thank you so much for putting that up.
Yep.
I had the great experience of writing a lesson plan for the Home Baking Association. And so what I did was created a lesson plan that had to focus on measuring and of course making cookies and some of the other things that go along with that. And so I was a national winner, and I had some great experiences connected with that. And as part of the experience, the Home Baking Association worked with Nasco to create a lesson plan that can be shared. And a little bit about me, I attended the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and I have a bachelor's and master's degree from there. I also have a business ed endorsement, so I have that as kind of in my back pocket too. And I've been a family consumer science teacher for all of my career, and it's been a great experience. One of the things that I really love about family and consumer sciences is the area of foods, and so it's something that's very close to my heart. I am located in Nebraska, and Howells, Nebraska, where I live and teach, is about 80 miles from Lincoln and Omaha. And Howells, Nebraska is a town of about 632 people. It's been around since 1887, and it's a wonderful place to teach and work. And I'm from a very small rural school. I have about 281 students in our school, PK through grades 12. So, you know, it's a small but a wonderful place to work, and I really enjoy it. I'm teaching in a high school that's probably right now about 20 years old, and I got to design the department, and that was a great experience. And it's a great layout. I love teaching here every day. It's lots and lots of fun. As far as my family goes, I've been married to my husband for 30 some years, and I have 2 children. One of them is a nurse, and they're both married, and she has 4 kids. And then my son is an agronomist, and he's married and has a daughter, and they have one coming in May. So that's going to be an exciting part of my spring. But Cookie Capers came about because our community was getting ready to celebrate its 125th anniversary, and they wanted to raise money. And one of the things that they decided they were going to do was have a cookie and candy sale. And they had this before Christmas, and they had asked if my students would like to help make cookies or some candies and treats to go along with that. And so we did, and the students had a great time doing that. And when it came time to apply for that award, I used that community service project as part of my project. So that's where it really started from. And when we look at the objectives of this lesson plan, it's to measure ingredients properly, explore professional test kitchen cookie baking techniques, which is always good, apply baking science knowledge of temperatures in the cookie baking lab, practice reading, having, and doubling recipes, and then also to select and prepare cookie recipes in a group, conduct evaluation of a product, bake cookies to donate in the school and community, list and apply food safety practices essential for preparing and packaging foods for donation. So those are the objectives of this lesson. And they also tie with the national FCS standards to analyze potential careers choices to determine knowledge, skills, and attitudes associated with each career, to demonstrate leadership skills and abilities in school, workplace, and community settings, to design or analyze a consumer product, and analyze food, equipment, and supplies needed for a menu. Also to prepare breads, baked goods, and desserts using safe handling and professional preparation techniques, demonstrate sensitivity to diversity and individuals with special needs, conduct sensory evaluations of food products, and analyze conditions and practices that promote safe food handling. So the lesson plan was divided into 3 days. And in the first day, learning about measuring, we introduced the fact that chocolate chip cookies are the #1 baked cookie in the United States. And of the 6 types of cookies, it's a drop cookie, which is dropped or portioned out on the cookie sheet. And then we'll spend some time asking questions about why it's important to measure and what can happen when a person does not measure correctly, and what are some common pieces of measuring equipment. So then it's always a good idea to review hand washing, and I use a resource called Wash Your Hands from homebaking.org to do that. And also we spent a few minutes reviewing baking food safety, reminding students about the importance of cleanliness habits, and also the importance of not eating raw products that should be baked. After that, we'll spend some time talking a little bit about measuring and having students get into groups and plan a practice measuring lab for the next day. In the lesson plan, there is a foods lab planning sheet that can be used, and also the Cookie Capers recipe chocolate chip cookies. And so students can use that to practice both the lab planning and to get familiar with the recipe so they're ready to do that in the second day. And a lab planning sheet and the recipe are attached to the lesson plan. Then on the second day, we'll review with students how to measure ingredients with correct recipe directions, talk about things that they'll need to do to mix the ingredients to follow the recipe, and talk a little bit about how to drop the cookie batter evenly with a teaspoon or cookie scoop onto baking pans, and then clean up the work area. So students will use their lab planning sheet as they do the lab. And then once the cookies are completed, there's a cookie caper scorecard that they can use to evaluate the cookies. And that scorecard can be used for any of the types of cookies, whether they're, shaped, drop cookies, bar cookies, what have you. So that can be used in other ways. And then talk about storing the cookies when they're cool and how we would package them for freezing or for donating. And actually, I just taught this lesson this past week, and it was one of those weeks when my junior high class had 2 track meets during the week, and time was kind of prime, so we did it a little bit differently, but it works well. I gave the students a recipe in class and assigned them ingredients to measure, and then gave some of them also tasks to do as the cookies were being mixed or put on the cookie sheets or baked. And then we went into the kitchen, and they demonstrated to me how they would measure those things, and to the rest of the class. And kids are always, big critics, and they're saying, you didn't do that right, or that's not level, or whatever. But that was a good way to do that. And then they just made cookies as a class. And then again, to save time, I had them do, while the cookies were baking, cutting the recipe in half and doubling the recipe that we'll be talking about here in a minute. But that was a good way to do that, just because our time was a little bit more limited.
Marla, I also wanted to ask, we had a question that came in, and the question was, how long are your class periods when you talk about days 1, 2, and 3?
50 minutes are our class periods, and you can get those things pretty well done in that 50-minute time frame. Good question.
Thank you. I'll let you know as more come in. Please
Okay.
do write in questions if you have any.
Yes, definitely. Then in the third day, we, at the bottom of the chocolate chip cookie recipe sheet, it asks the students to cut the recipe in half and double the recipe. So I remind students the process. When you're cutting it in half, you're taking everything times 1/2. And when you double it, they need to take the amounts times 2 or 2/1. And then have the students complete the sheet. And you'll find that some kids, this is easy for them, but there are some kids that still struggle with some of those basic math skills in middle school. And so once it's done, we usually go through that and have the kids share their answers and discuss. And if somebody doesn't understand how somebody got that answer, we work it out on the board or whatever. But I always tell them that's a great way to really practically use math in a way that has good results. So we do that, and they share their answers. And in the lesson plan, there's also the key for the halves and recipe doubled. So if you wanted to, you could have them evaluate and check theirs over, or you could discuss it, certainly. Then on the third day, we have kind of the community service option, and that is we have the students package their cookies after that and have them create a label for the cookies with an ingredient list. And that was kind of important for the bake sale that we were doing, because people needed to know ingredients for allergy reasons. And so we did do that and listed the ingredients from most to least. Then we had the option to weigh packages, but we didn't do that. We had them do the weighing at the bake sale because they ended up selling by weight, so people could fill containers and then they could weigh those out. And then it also gave a packaging date and location. And we also gave the kids a baking certificate that kind of recognized them for their part in this community service project. And so we had the classes have each group bake and package 2 cookie recipes. So when we did this, we actually did it in two days of lab time, and then they shared those. But there would be a lot of other ways you could use those cookies. You know, you could donate them to senior citizens in your community. There are bake and take days in March where they encourage people to bake something and then take it to someone in their community. You might share it with a child care center. You could do it as part of an FCCLA project or for school or community events. And in the past, we've sometimes baked cookies for parent-teacher conferences, for the parents while they're waiting. We've also done that for maybe, you know, parents' nights for community events and sports activities. So those are all easy ways to incorporate those activities as a service project for your classes. Some of the things that the project.
Marla, just to let you know, we had a couple questions that came in that asked just that question of how do you frame it as a community service project, and do your students get service hours for participating in this activity then?
Yes, actually they would. Our school does not do service hours, but we do keep track of volunteer work that students do, and a lot of those get used later down the road for, you know, even scholarship applications and, you know, National Honor Society applications and things like that. So we do, you know, have kids keep track of that, and that's an easy way to incorporate some service learning with what's going on in the classroom too.
And then we also had a question of, has this project changed with the packaging and how you're handling the booking and packing with COVID?
Definitely. I was going to say we didn't, you know, this project was done a few years ago before COVID, obviously. We probably wouldn't have done that this year. Just as the school year began here in Nebraska, they encouraged us to not take, you know, things we made in the classroom outside of the classroom, and you know, to only have what we would eat in the classroom. So we've pretty much followed that, although things have gotten a little bit less, I guess, restrictive here in our state, but we're still pretty careful about how we would handle that. And so, you know, that project this year would not have probably happened, but hopefully down the road we'll be able to do more of those kinds of things as things get better, definitely.
And then the question also came in on what kind of packaging do you use when you talk about attractively packaging the food items?
Well, you know, we put them on attractive plates and we bagged them. We made colorful labels so that they could see what they did. If we were donating those, we would probably dress them up with, you know, all kinds of ribbons and that kind of thing to just make them a little bit fancier. But since they were going to be resold, we didn't do that for that project. But you know, you could decorate for the seasons and you know, just make them a lot more fun to look at as in the packaging zone.
And then the last question I have that has come in so far is, do you do different types of cookies and flavors of cookies, or do you mainly do chocolate chip?
Yeah, we did all kinds of flavors. This was at Christmas time, so we did lots of different kinds. We did sugar cookies, we did peanut butter cookies, we did peanut butter balls, we did chocolate chip, we did candy cane cookies. We just did a whole bunch of different ones. Yes. So yeah, we didn't just bake chocolate chip. We baked a lot of them, all kinds of them. And a couple of groups did some homemade candies too, because they, suggested we could have those. So we did things like some fudge and peanut brittle and those kinds of things too. So that was another fun part of that project.
Great. Okay, I'll let you get back to it.
Okay. I guess some of the things that this project did on a skills level was obviously the baking skills emphasis. We also looked at safe food handling, resource management, because we wanted to be as efficient as we could with preparing and making sure we had everything done on time, and also being a little conservative in our spending. We had the ingredients list, and we kind of shopped ahead of time to get some good specials and good buys for those items. Communication skills, students needed to do a lot of communication in their groups. Obviously math skills and reading skills. And then there was some creativity involved in that as well. The finished product was lots of different kinds of cookies, and I included some of the pictures of those on the slides. I guess one of the things that kind of surprised us is the next week in the newspaper, there was this big thank you, and it says, with the help of numerous people in the community, the Cookie Walk Bake Sale was a great success. Special thanks to Marla Prusa and the FCS and FCCLA students for their donations of food items. With your help, we were able to add a generous amount to the Q125 fund, and so it was signed by the people in charge of that. So that was kind of fun. The kids were surprised that they got thanked publicly for what they did, but it was a great way to do that project. One other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was the Home Baking Association, and a shout out to them for providing the opportunity for the Educator Award, and they helped in making this lesson plan possible. They provide a lot of wonderful resources for educators and students. And one of the things that, if you haven't been to their website, you should go there and take a look at what they have. They have lots of recipes, videos, infographics, lots of things to help you teach about baking. And one of the things that they provide is an application for the Home Baking Association Educator Award, and that was just finished this spring, March 31st. So the next entry deadline would be March 31st, 2022. And everybody that enters receives free baking resources and teaching aids, and the winner receives $1,000 plus an all expense paid trip to the Home Baking Association National Meeting. And I did want to talk just a little bit about that experience. When I won that award, the meeting was held in Stowe, Vermont, and it was in late September, early October at a resort called Stowe Lake. And it was really pretty there. It was beautiful. And at the national meeting, I attended sessions and I presented my project to the group. And it was really fun because it was made up of professionals in the baking industry. So there are people from all kinds of companies there, McCormick and some of the other spice and ingredient companies were there. So it was a lot of people who were interested in baking and food, and that was really a lot of fun. We got to enjoy a lot of really great food as part of that conference, and we also got to visit some local attractions. So it was very pretty there that time of year. And we took some tours that they arranged for us. We went to Ben and Jerry's, we went to Cabot Cheese, and we went to the King Arthur Flour Company. And it was really fun because they have a retail store there. They just had all kinds of things. They also had baking classes for us there. And my husband went with me and he had a wonderful time. We had to do these hands-on baking exercises, which were really fun. And then we also did pizza, and they had a wood fire pizza oven there. So it was really a neat experience to do that. So I would encourage anybody to enter their uh, educator contest, because it's very, very interesting experience, and was really a lot of fun as well.
And I think everyone should be able to see my screen. I pulled up the homepage of the Home Baking Association. We had a couple people ask, what was this organization again? Because it sounds like a great experience. And we had a couple other questions that came in too, if you don't mind answering some more. So we had one question came in asking, how you're handling social distancing in your classroom, and if you're able to keep your kids 6 feet apart while they bake.
Yeah, yeah. We started out the year really, really, keeping that social distancing going on, and we did spread ourselves out, and we did a lot of caution. We were wearing masks all the time. We still are, but we have had very few cases in our school in the last month, and in fact, no students have been quarantined or any of those kinds of things. So we're not as quite as worried about the social distancing right now, but we still are wearing masks, and we're still very careful, and still very much about sanitizing and washing hands and all of those things. But we have been really fortunate. We've been in session all year and in person, and that has been great after last spring. It's great to be back in the classroom. So definitely that has changed. And I know it's a lot harder when you have bigger class sizes. I know I've got classes that range in size from like 8 to 15 or so. And the bigger classes, it's a challenge. We have to spread out a lot more, but in the smaller classes, it's a little easier to do that.
And another question that came in is, how many students are in each of your groups as you work through the lab portion of the cookie baking?
It depends on the class, the number of kids that I have in class. I like to see, 3 or 4 if I can. Sometimes they have to be bigger and sometimes they have to be smaller. It just depends on the groups. But I think the more opportunities kids have to have the direct experience with the baking process, the more they learn. When the groups get too big, sometimes you have people that aren't getting hands in there or having that experience. So I think it's important to keep your groups, as small as you can, given the numbers you have. And also, it depends on how your facilities are set up and how much space you have as well.
And another question is, as you bake various kinds of cookies, what are some of your favorite places to go to find those cookie recipes to use in the classroom?
Oh, I go online a lot for recipes. I sometimes use, the tried and true recipes that I have a couple cookbooks left. Cookbooks have kind of almost disappeared from our shelves, but I have a couple that I go to. I like All Recipes, and that's a good place to go for recipes. And some of the companies like Kraft and some of the other companies that are out there that have a lot of baking recipes are also, I think, a good place to go for recipes. And we've had students go online and they find recipes too, and sometimes you have some real winners, and sometimes you have some flops, and that's a good learning experience for them too, because sometimes you don't know when you look at those recipes, if they're not from a real reliable source, how that's all going to play out. So sometimes that's a good experience for kids too.
Another question that came in as well is, how do you plan for various food and health concerns during this project?
Well, right now, one of the things that we have to think a lot about is ingredients. And in our school, we're a peanut-free school system, and that has kind of really changed the way that we do business, I guess. We have to, think a lot more about recipes and what ingredients we're using. And so that sometimes limits us. We also have to, be cognizant of other kinds of sensitivities that students have and find ways to work with them. And sometimes that, requires a little bit more work in finding recipes that are suitable and useful for students when they do have those various needs. And as far as special needs students in the classroom, most of the time students are very good about helping them out. And sometimes if I have a parent in the classroom, sometimes too. And that seems to be a win-win for all the students involved because they like to get involved and they like to be with working with other students. So that's a positive too.
Wonderful. Okay, that's all the questions we have right now. I can turn it back over to you if you'd like.
Okay. One of the things that I wanted to also say is a big thanks to Nasco for all that you do for us as FCS educators. It's always fun to check out the educational lesson plans that you guys have on your website. And I love Nasco for all the kits and supplies and learning resources and equipment that they have for us in the FCS classroom. And there's so many different kinds of baking equipment items and supplies that they have available. And I order from them every year. And so I really appreciate all the things that they do to change, to keep up with change and to help us in the classroom. And they're always adding new products and services. And we also appreciate, the webinars that they set up and the useful classroom resources. Those have just been wonderful. One of the things that someone actually sent I guess a question yesterday about single serving cookie recipes. And I did go online and found several of those. And let's see. I can share those. There's a link on the slides, but I'm going to go back into my drive and look at that. But I found some recipes that I thought were pretty good.
And Marla, as you look for that, I can also just chat for a couple minutes. First off, thank you for all the kind words about NASCO. We had a couple other questions that came in as well, asking, for example, if you have a favorite kind of kitchen tool that you use. Do you have certain baking pans or mixers that you prefer to use in your classroom? And how that affects kind of how they turn out and what lasts when working with your students.
Okay. I like using the KitchenAid mixer, and we have a couple of those. But I also find that for sometimes with students, just a hand mixer is also a great tool, just because it's a little lighter and it's easy to pass around and allow more than one student to work at the same time. I've gotten some baking pans from Nasco that I really like as well. And they have lasted, through countless batches of cookies, and something our FCCLA chapter does every year is sell Valentine's cookies, and we've made many cookies, big ones on there, and they've done very well. So those are some of my favorites as far as equipment from Nasco. But There are a lot of great measuring tools out there too, that make it so much easier and fun to measure and mix. So those are some things that I like to see. I found some single serving cookie recipes for peanut butter cookies, of course, chocolate chip. I found some chocolate peanut butter cookies that used some Reese's Pieces in them. A soft sugar cookie that is basically one large or two small cookies that would be suitable for one person. A large snickerdoodle cookie that students could make. A jumbo cinnamon butterscotch oatmeal cookie that I thought looked pretty good too. And the person that sent that question, and thank you to them for doing that, was in a system where they could not make multiple of anything and nothing could leave the classroom, and they didn't want students to have more than one or two of something at a time. And I also found a chocolate sea salt brownie cookie recipe that looked pretty tasty as well. So there are recipes out there, and the link for those will be in the slides. But that's a need that kind of came out of COVID, I think, for a lot of people, is, adjusting sizes and quantities. And that can be a good learning experience for students too. And, down the road when they're maybe a college student or living on their own, those single serving recipes may be something that is just right for them too.
The other thing too that came in is Kristen wrote in that she also uses a single serving chocolate chip cookie recipe to practice measurement, and it's especially easy during COVID. So Kristen, if you send that to me as well, or respond to the email this came in, I would love to share that out with people when we send Marla's PowerPoint as well to everybody. So we would love to see that.
Yes, that would be great. That would be great.
We also had another question that came in that asked if how many stations you have in your lab, and then how you work with the workflow within that space.
We have 4 stations in our lab, and we are set up in kind of U-shaped configurations, so they're pretty efficient. And I have another area that is just, one long counter space, and if we were really needing space, I'll have a group move to that, so I would have 5 stations. But that seems to work pretty well. They're all pretty much set up the same identically, so students are moving from area to area. The setup is pretty much the same everywhere, and that seems to help out to keep it more efficient. Of course, at this time of year, we've been having labs all year, and now it's time to be thinking about cleaning things up here in a couple 3 weeks, and seeing what we need to order for next year, and getting things ready for summer. But I think having things kind of organized and up to the point where everything is pretty similar in the lab areas can help make things a lot easier. And actually, we only have 2 ovens in our kitchen, but the way it's set up, they share with the space beside them, so we don't have too many problems with running out of oven space in our kitchens. But that's kind of how we're set up.
Nice. We also had the question come in, what is your favorite resource from the Home Baking Association?
Oh, one of my favorites is the Baker's Dozen DVD. It has a lot of recipes. Another one I like is Baking with Friends, because now as my grandkids are getting older, we can do baking projects together, and they have some fun recipes that you can do with kids or with other people as an activity too. So I like that resource very well.
And then the question also came in is, as a nut-free school, do you have to be concerned with chocolate chips that might be manufactured in a factory that is not totally nut-free?
We have not really. I mean, I have checked that, and I know that could be a problem. But the brand that we use is just a store brand, and we have never had any problems with that. So I think
Knock on wood, right?
yes, knock on wood. We're okay. But yeah, that is something that you really have to watch out for. And I guess we have one particular student, and I don't have her in class this year, but I did last year and the year before. Yeah, she really is sensitive, and so we have to watch that very closely.
Yeah, it's a huge concern for
It
many
is.
students. The reaction can be quite severe. So
Oh, yes,
yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
I also had another comment come in about Monique uses a chocolate chip cookie in a mug recipe with her students.
Oh, yeah,
So that's also a fun single
yes,
serving.
I've seen those too, and those are fun to do.
Yeah.
We've done a couple of those um, in the mugs. Those are
Yeah.
kids like doing that.
Yeah. It's just a fun setting then too.
It
Well, if
is.
anybody else has any questions, now is a great time to ask. Otherwise, we can wrap up. As we mentioned, thank you so much for understanding our technical difficulties, and we don't get to see live Marla's amazing, PowerPoint that she created for us. But I will be sure to be working with Marla this evening, and then hopefully getting that sent out, first thing tomorrow, if not this evening. So do look for that PowerPoint with those resources and links and recipes. And we do sincerely appreciate you attending our webinar. Nasco Education will be back with another webinar next month. We will be having a knife demonstration webinar with Mercer Culinary, and he'll be showing some techniques on how to sharpen knives and do some basic knife care, and up for a wonderful time, I think. And you can even bring your knives because he'll be doing some of those things live. So without any further questions, oh, I have one more that just popped in. Marla, have you used the Home Baking Association's 5-minute baking activities?
Oh, yes, that's another good one. Yes, there are a lot of great things in there. Definitely.
Okay,
Yes.
what kind of activities? Do you recall any off the top of your head?
Um, some of them are just simple things like, just quick things you can do that don't take very much time. Some of them are kind of experiment based. So that's really fun. Yeah. And, they align with, different units that you teach. So it's fun.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you all for your questions, your comments, and thank you so much, Marla, for sharing your experience and expertise. And thank you, Marla, especially as we fought with our platform tonight. We really appreciate your perseverance. So
Nope.
I hope you all have a great evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Jenny.